there be light. Yeah, that looks kind of cool. And now, what if I move it to... Still need something behind me, but that looks a lot better. Hello. Just covering what I know. As far as the Trinity versus the Godhead. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Because before I go into the whole Nicene Creed thing, where they end up coming up with the term Trinity, but they don't create the Trinity. Anyway, I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. And you guys have a wealth of knowledge, which is awesome. So yeah, that's going to be our conversation today. Okay. Get to definitions in a second. But from what I understand so far, there's polytheism, which would be 3 gods, which is what the Godhead would be. So that's the Mormon Godhead, technically. Because also, they believe that they can become gods too. And that God the Father was once a man who became God. So ultimately, God the Father of this planet would be... he would have a God before him to show him the way or whatever. Ugh. Anyway, that's multiple gods. So like Hinduism. You have modalism, which is still the 3 persons, but God is bouncing between the 3. Right? But it doesn't work, because when Jesus was on earth, heaven wasn't empty. God the Father was still operating, still doing his thing, while Jesus, the God the Son, was doing his thing on earth. And you have God the Spirit. He kind of gets left out. He's like the unsung hero of the Trinity. He's just the Spirit. Is it the Spirit or the Ghost? Mormonism uses one, and then anyway, I'm gonna use them both for a while until I get the old Mormon phrasing out of my programming. So, but with Christianity, there's still monotheism, which is one God. 3 persons, 3 divine persons who are co-equal. In essence? Is that like the part that I'm losing or forgetting? Like one in essence? This is where the definitions I'm going to have to get into. Okay. All you Trinitarians who've been Christian for a long time are probably laughing right now, like, oh, this poor kid. You're going to get there soon, buddy. And all the Mormons are just like, no, it's so obvious. I love a lot of Mormons. You guys are great. Your hearts are in good places, and I genuinely understand. At surface level, 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. It's a very basic knowledge, very 3rd grade, which you guys claim Joseph Smith's intelligence was. So that makes sense. King James was written at the 5th grade level, by the way. Different topic, different video. Wow. Definitions.
The Father is called Yahweh God, the Spirit is called Yahweh God, and Jesus is called Yahweh God. There's only one Yahweh. How do we figure this out? So what they do is eventually they come up with this language of being and person. Being describes what you are, person describes who you are. This chair has being. It's what philosophers called ontological status. But it doesn't have personhood. I didn't ask its permission to sit on it.
Right.
But it does exist.
Yeah.
And so being is what you are. God is Yahweh. And we see this, Jesus tells his disciples to go baptize in the name, and then he says, of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So he says the singular name, but then he describes 3 persons. And so this is the question the early church is wrestling through, and they say, okay, Jesus is given the honors, the attributes, the names, the deeds, and the seat of God. It's an acronym, HANDS. The Spirit is given the honors, the attributes, the names, the deeds, and the seat of God. And the Father is given the honors, the attributes, the names, the deeds, and the seat of God. There's only one God. How do we understand this? Now, the ancient Jews actually already had a concept of this in that they weren't Unitarian fully. God can rule and reign in heaven, and yet the Ark of the Covenant could still have God's presence. Before Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham is met by 3 individuals, 2 that are identified as angels and 1 that is identified as Yahweh God. The angels go off to Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham dialogues with Yahweh. Eventually, Abraham leaves, and then in chapter 19, in Genesis 19, says that Yahweh on earth rains fire and brimstone from Yahweh in heaven. Now, you only have one Yahweh, so what's going on there? Well, we would say, within like a Christian framework, this is the pre-incarnate Christ. He is not enfleshed in who Jesus is, but this is the complex unity. And the Jews understand this, and even early on in rabbinical Judaism, there's also...
Okay, so I've heard this before, that because no one can be in the presence of God the Father, that anytime old prophets or anyone is interacting with God in the Old Testament, they're interacting with pre-incarnate Jesus. So pre-birth Jesus. Which, 1, awesome, but 2, what? Okay, so he's like, Jesus is coming down and interacting. Because there's... So, like, I get that, but also my brain is having a hard time just wrapping around that. Because if Jesus is coming down, like, and interacting with people, but he's not Jesus yet. So I guess he's Elohim, because he's not born yet. He would be Yeshua, like that. Yeshua hasn't shown up yet. But the Spirit, the person of Jesus is showing up. See, like, my brain's just right now trying to get that. But anyway, from what I understand, I know, like, he was talking about how there's the Unitarian words. There's also words that are the same but can mean a single or multiple. So like God and so like sheep. 1 sheep, 2 sheep, 3 sheep. One word but can mean either one or multiple, which is what Elohim is. Elo is God, but he means multiple, like cherubim. Cherub is a individual, but Elohim means multiple, which Elohim is... I know that's what a lot of Christians use that supports the Trinity, because they're saying right there, multiple gods, our image, but one God, Elo. He means multiple, but all in one. I'm getting there. I'm just trying to fully understand it, and then maybe my confusion, maybe there's a video will reach a Mormon and it'll help them understand the Trinity better. Because I know that if Mormons seek to understand the Trinity, it's going to go against all their teachings that Joseph put, because Joseph claimed that God said that the Council of Nicaea was an abomination. So, I also know that Mormons get the story of Constantine and the Council of Nicaea just completely incorrect, which I used to all the time too, because I too watched the Da Vinci Code and read the book, and Dan Brown's a great writer, and it's a great story. The book is way more enjoyable of an adventure than the movie. Anyway, so yeah, that's okay. So when talking about the Trinity, there's 1 what and 3 who's, as Wes was explaining. And James White, who wrote The Forgotten Trinity, which has been fantastic for helping me bridge that gap between Mormonism and Christianity. And I know you Mormons are going to be like, we're Christians too, we're Christians too. You're Christians on like the smallest technicality. And I'm not sure that's something you want to hold on to. So, yes, you believe in Christ, blah, blah, blah. You're technically Christians, but I am not going to lump you into Trinitarian Christians because you're not. You are your own Christian denomination. So you would be like J-dubs. If you want to be called that, cool. But you are not a Trinitarian Christian. You are a heretical Christian. Unless, I do enough research and the Trinity turns out to be BS. I don't think it is. Because all the arguments that I'm finding against the Council of Nicaea tend to just stem from Dan Brown's arguments. And then a lot of arguments for modalism and Jesus's being not God. A lot of it just stems from the satanic argument, which is found everywhere. Satan uses the same lies a lot. He uses the same tactics and rebrands it. Like you see it with Islam. Angel comes down, being the light, tells Muhammad that this is the truth. Muhammad does his thing. Joseph Smith gets greeted by an angel of light calling himself Moroni. So 3 persons, 1 what? Which would mean that Jesus, God, and the Spirit are operating individually. And on a one purpose. So the Godhead, the one purpose that makes sense. You would have, our purpose is to fulfill God the Father's vision or whatever. I totally get that. You can see them structured at the church. You have the president and then his 2 counselors. Great. Totally understand where they're going from. Very corporate pyramid structure when you dive into it. Mormonism is a very elementary understanding of Christianity. And you have to start getting into it's literally this. Mormonism, like I said, is 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. And the Trinity is 1 × 1 × 1 = 1. 3 who's, 1 what? That's really what it is. It's just that Joseph Smith couldn't comprehend the Trinity. Or to stand out in a time of religious enlightenment and reformation. He just went with polytheism, modalism. No, what do they technically follow? There is a very specific type of ism that Mormonism falls under. I can't remember what it is. Did I put it in a book? If I did, I don't remember. that's kind of that's kind of embarrassing. This is not how the channel's going to be from now on. This is just me getting in the habit of making content and just trying to get my thoughts out and using you guys to help correct me because there's so much information out there. Am I going to rely on the comments? No, but you guys do give me a lot of information to go check out, which I love. Because if you get enough information, you can find the grains of truth. When you find enough grains of truth, you find the ultimate truth. Because they're all going to point to it. So that's why I like getting extremes. You get mediums, and you eventually find what's actually true. So it's like CNN, Fox, whatever the independent journalists are doing, you can decipher the truth there. Now, as far as Constantine and the Nicene Creed go, my very limited knowledge is that Constantine converted to Christianity after he had a dream about a Christian symbol. Was it the cross? I don't think it was the cross. I want to say it was the Jerusalem cross, or it was I can't remember. I'm gonna look it up. It'll be here. I'll do research in post. But he had a vision or a dream. He saw this Christian symbol. He put it on his shields, and then he won a battle. And after that was when he decided to convert to Christianity. It wasn't because there was this overwhelming push of followers and he didn't want his empire to fall apart, or whatever the Dan Brown narrative is that he pushed that became very popular. Um, from what I understand, Christianity was not an overwhelming religion. It was not overpowering everything. It would be cooler if he converted, and then the emperor after him made it legal. More research for me. Anyway, when he called the council of Nicaea, he brought bishops from all over the empire, and he was like, hey, like, there's a lot of discussion. Like, is it one God, three persons, three gods, three persons? Like, the argument of the Godhead was brought up at this. And I also know that Saint Nicholas, Santa Claus, slapped someone because they didn't agree with what was being said. I gotta look it up. I just remember they said something heretical, or what would ultimately become heretical, and Santa Claus slapped him for it. This is why I love history. So, like I said, here's what I thought I knew, and then I learned a bunch, and then I realized I didn't know anything. And then I realized I knew a little bit. This is how it goes. We were reading in John 6 today. Right? No. We were at church and reading in Peter. But the pastor brought up John 6, and this was way too spot on for what I felt like I was going through. It's John 6, verse 60 through 71. But basically, the disciples start to turn away. Like, like we've all been there when we're trying to understand what Jesus is meaning when he speaks in parables. And I love that he speaks in parables because there's so much to a parable that you can get just constant lessons from it, as opposed to just like, this is the lesson for today. Yeah, so the disciples were saying that it's like hard saying, or who can understand it, and Jesus is like, does this offend you? It is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit and they are life. But there are some of you who do not believe. What is that in the old King James? Hang on, we're getting distracted. Sorry, guys. I mean, in the ESV it says, it is the Spirit who gives life. The flesh is no help at all. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. There are some of you who do not believe. See, the ESV is fine, but that's why I love the King James. The flesh profits nothing. The words that I speak to you are spirit and they are life. Like, there's a poeticness to the King James, that old English, and I just like it. What can I say, guys? Matthew, Mark. There's John 6:66. John 6:66 is from that time many of his disciples. Oh, whoa. It is the Spirit that quickeneth, the flesh profiteth nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. So I didn't need to go to the King James because there's just a little profiteth, little F words. So there are some of you who do not believe. Therefore I have said to you that no one come to me unless it has been granted to him by the Father. What? I have said to you that no one can come to me unless it has been granted to him by the Father. So God won't allow you to follow Jesus unless he grants. So God, hang on. I'm gonna have to study this and go back to it. What I want to talk about was, like, it's getting to the point where, like, followers are like, hey, like, I don't agree with this, I don't like this, which is understandable because if they're all Jewish, they're gonna be like, yo, like, this contradicts what the not Pharisees, but the Hebrew leaders are saying. So many disciples leave, yeah, so John 6:66, from that time many of his disciples went back and walked with him no more. It's exactly like how I was feeling. Like, I don't like being a Christian. I wish I was atheist. It was easier being atheist. It was easier being Taoist. And Jesus just lets them go. He doesn't say, no, like, you're going to lose your... He just says, okay, go. Like, you wouldn't have been... Like, God allowed you to be in my presence and follow me, and if you want to go, you can go. He's not going to force you to follow him. And then Jesus said to the 12, do you also want to go away? Was this moment in The Chosen? I don't remember it. The Chosen's really boring. I'm not a fan of that show. I've got so many issues with that show. From a creative standpoint, the biggest issue is there's no antagonist, there's no drama, there's really no, there's no reason for me to watch the show. It's just like they took it's just a children's show with adult actors, and it's live action. It's a missed home run for me. I'm not a fan of it. I do like that it captured Jesus's humane, side, but it's not something I'm gonna watch again. Anyway, did I not choose you? The 12. And one of you is a devil. He knew Judas was gonna betray him, and he still loved him. He still accepted him into the 12 and was like, yeah, you're gonna be the reason I get murdered. Oh. That's like dating a red flag. It's still it's like, oh yeah, you're gonna cheat on me, break my heart, and take 80% of the stuff. But sure, let's just keep going. Because this has to happen. Anyway. Who else are we gonna go to? Is Peter's response. Where else would I turn to? That's how I felt after that video. I was like, I really... Did I touch something? Did I... Going through it, man. Because I was not prepared for this. I was just going to kind of wing it and cover what I was talking about. But he just had to reach me during church. We can have discussions. You guys are great. Keep on. Content's going to improve. I promise. This is just the rough start. You're in the pre-production screen testing phase of this channel. And it's ugly and messy and sometimes fun, sometimes weird. But we're going to get there. I was having a conversation with someone about taxes and whether or not we should pay them, and I showed them the Constitution Amendment and how Congress is allowed to just take taxes regardless. And I open up to Mark 12, 17. Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. Except Caesar is acting like a corrupt piece of crap and sending all our billions to our greatest ally. Tangent. Anyway, love you guys. I'm Brendan. This is my Soul Quest. That's my Soul Quest. This channel's gonna be great. Again, things are gonna get better. I'm Brendan. Till next time. Ciao.